The American dream, something that everyone has once aspired to. After all, the American dream is the idea, the concept that if you come to America, if you work hard, you can get ahead. With a little bit of work ethic, with a little bit of discipline, you can afford to have a nice home. A home that your stay-at-home wife can raise the children in, that you can go off to work to your 8 to 5. You can come back and you can enjoy time with the family, and you're able to afford a couple of cars and go on vacations a couple times a year. That was the American dream. Now, after record inflation over the past couple of years, things have changed. Home prices are twice as much. Interest on homes are also 3 times as much. The average price for a mortgage has increased dramatically to the point where people can't afford a house. Now we have cars being $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 for a single car for a family to drive. The price of affordable fast food is now almost unaffordable. McDonald's, which used to cost a couple dollars on the dollar menu, now charges you up to $16 for one meal, for one person. These are restaurant prices from a fast food company. Gas prices are ever increasing. They've gone up to almost $6.50 in certain parts of the country. Seemingly everything has gone up in price. Everything but maybe the Costco hot dog and drink combo. That stayed the same price miraculously. It's the one thing that's actually fought off inflation. But every single other thing, from housing, food, grocery, restaurants, transportation, every aspect of life is dramatically more expensive. And it seems as though the American dream is becoming more of a fictional tale than an actual reality. Right now, Gen Z, which is the younger generation today, they're convinced that the American dream is no longer attainable. They've given up on it because of all of these different reasons, and now they're shifting. They're gravitating on to soft savings, which is a term you probably haven't heard, but soft savings is something we're going to be talking about. They've given up on retirement. They've actually said that retirement may be overrated. This is Gen Z, an entire generation of people saying retirement is not something that we're looking forward to. So we're going to be going over this. In fact, we're going to be going over the actual study. This is from Intuit. It's called the Prosperity Index Study, where they study an entire generation's view on finances, and it has a lot of revealing information. We'll be looking at what soft savings are. We'll be looking at what their view is on retirement, and I'll be telling you what they're doing right and what I would be doing differently. So we have a lot to get to. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, just to be clear, the generation that they're sampling here is Gen Z, which is 18 to 25 years old. So if you're 18 to 25, you're in Gen Z. If you're 26 to 41, you're a millennial. That's the group that I'm in. So this is a group that's one gen younger than me. Now, in the first part of this study, they examined the influence of social media on Gen Z and their personal finance. And this is interesting because when I grew up, I'm 34 years old. So when I grew up, the internet was basically a new thing. It was just getting pieced together. We had dial-up internet. We had Gmail, which was just released by Google. You had some basic things. We could play online games, things like that. But there wasn't Facebook. In fact, YouTube was brand new. I remember when that came out and it started gaining steam. I remember around high school was when I first made a Facebook account. All of this stuff was brand new. It didn't have a massive impact. Now with Gen Z, being 10 years younger, you're growing up in a time where social media is everywhere. It's pervasive. It's at every part of life, every school, everybody is impacted by social media. So the impacts of this are dramatically different for this generation. And they say, inspired by recent movements promoting transparency around beauty, motherhood, and infertility, there is room to open up discussions around another traditionally taboo topic, personal finance. I agree with this. I felt like for a long period of time, that if people openly discuss personal finance more regularly, there would be less ignorance surrounding the topic. Now, what they find in this study is a different impact. They believe that social media is influencing this generation in a negative way overall. Gen Z is more impacted by these comparisons and feel like they're lagging behind the curated highlight reels they see online. So, a lot of people flashing how much money they have and their nice cars and how they made a ton of money day trading. That, of course, has a negative impact on people watching it, feeling like they're not doing something right, working for 15 bucks an hour. Gen Z in particular is not comfortable talking about finance, and this is a problem. They'll talk about almost anything before they talk about finance. They'll talk about workplace drama. They'll talk about climate change, well-being, so mental well-being, relationship drama, politics, sexual experiences, struggles with parenting. All of that before they'll talk about their savings, their credit card debt, bad investments, or salary. Everything financially related is on the lower end of what they're willing to talk about. Now, again, a lot of this is surprising. There's some topics here that I would consider more taboo that people are willing to talk about than personal finances. They highlight on this study, half of Americans would rather talk about sex and dating than they would about their debt and money. That's how taboo money is. You talk about intimate relationships, dating, gossiping in the workplace, anything but personal finance. And then we wonder as a country why people are so financially ignorant, why there's so many people that make dumb financial decisions. For some reason, we've put up a gate where you can't talk about personal finance, and that's having a real toll on the country. Now, even though most of them regard finance as a taboo topic and they'd rather talk about workplace drama, relationships, or different subjects, there is a potential to build a community around finance. This is something that I've been trying to do and I think is completely necessary. There needs to be more education with younger people around finance because it would make their lives so much easier. If you get started investing and on the right track and you learn the right lessons right away with your life, instead of waiting till you're 30 or 40 or 50, your whole life, the whole rest of your life financially is much easier. And out of all the things that can make your life stressful, there's relationships and there's finance. And around half of divorces, in fact, I think the majority of divorces today are caused by financial problems. It is a serious problem, something that people need to address. So building a sense of community, I think, is something very important where we can learn together. In this survey, they say that 7 out of 10 say they would feel a sense of community in talking with other people who have the same financial goals as they do. And I see that as being correct. Now they move on from the social media aspect of this to a new aspect, the soft savings aspect. And I had not heard about soft savings because it's a brand new term. What does this actually mean? Well, they go on to define it. Now they say that soft savings is Gen Z's response to the fire hustle. The fire hustle culture is financial independence, retire early. It's a very aggressive movement in saving every single penny until you can fully retire ahead of schedule. That is the FIRE movement, and I think it's a very aggressive way of looking at finances. And they also mention the girl boss era. And I would say my inclination when I hear soft savings is to be critical. When I read this, I actually agree with it. I think that FIRE culture is a very pervasive way of getting people too fixated on getting ahead in the workplace, saving every penny, never having real experiences, and hopefully you get to this holy grail at the end where you can retire when you're like 35. And that gives up a lot of years where you could have experiences and do other things and form relationships. So I have not been a vocal advocate of the FIRE movement. I never have my entire history. And I also agree with them bringing up the girl boss era. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're a woman, you're in the workforce and that's your ambition. You want to go into the workforce, you want to compete, you want to get ahead and become a boss. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, more power to you. I think that's awesome. But I also think it's awesome if a girl or a woman has the ambition of being a stay-at-home mom, raising children well, making sure that they're well-rounded when they become adults, getting them to school and back, making sure that their homework's done, making sure that they get to the soccer game and back, driving the minivan around. I think that that's awesome as well. And I don't think that society should coax women into one direction or the other. They should be able to choose what they want to do and not be shamed for what direction they're making. Both of those are incredibly important roles. I think in relationships and families, you need to do what works best for you. In my relationship, my wife never had the ambition of being a girl boss, of going into the workforce and being competitive and getting ahead and being a leader in the workforce. That was never her ambition. That was never something that she had an interest in. She wanted to be a mom. She wanted to raise children and do it well. So our division of labor, what we do in our household is I focus on making money. I'm competitive. I go into the workforce. I do that stuff. And she does everything else. When I look at who's doing more work, she's clearly doing more work than me. I got the better end of this deal. But if you'd asked her, she would say she got the better end of this deal. We both feel like we're getting a great deal here. And this relationship works really well for us. You got to find what relationship works for you based on your ambitions. Now, later on in our relationship, she changed her mind on one thing. She wanted to become an RN. So for the past 5 years, she worked to become a registered nurse. And now she works around once a week as a respite care nurse for kids that are challenged. So she's doing that to do something that's outside of the home. But even so, everyone has their different ambitions. Everyone can do what works for them. I think the whole idea that you got to be forced into hustling all the time, this is very much a millennial idea. This is my generation. The hustle culture, the get up and rise and grind, that type of thing. I don't agree with that. I think the millennials push that culture too much. And I also think the girl boss era of kind of downplaying anything other than dual working homes, everybody going in and working as much as possible. I don't think that's everyone's ambition. Now, this is the part where I think they're wrong. They say right here that Gen Z, it's all about personal growth and mental well-being in the now. So living in the moment is the way they describe it. And I think this is a nice euphemism for saying we don't want to be fully responsible in thinking about our future. You can live in the moment while being financially responsible. And this is what I don't like about this study. This study portrays it as two different options, as you can either focus on your mental well-being and experiences now, or you can focus on having a solid retirement. There's no chance of having them both at the same time. That's not even in the discussion. See, they act as though these things are mutually exclusive when they're not. You can both have your mental well-being, you can live in the now while not being careless with your finances. For Gen Z, the future feels far away. 3 and 4 say the current economy makes them hesitant to set up long-term goals. The current economy, you mean the 4% GDP growth? The fact that we have incredibly low unemployment, everyone has jobs right now. This is one of the best economies that we've had by almost every metric. The only real negative force we're facing is inflation, which is coming down right now. There's other generations that had far more to complain about in terms of economics. There's no Great Depression, there's no recession right now. If they had 9% unemployment right now, then I think that would be a more valid concern. 2 and 3 of Gen Z say they're not sure they'll have enough money to be able to retire. This is something that they're acting like they're not sure of, but it's determined on the decisions they're making today. They still have time to be able to fully retire if they make the right decisions right now. This is not the boomer generation, this is Gen Z. They're in a category right now where they can determine the future by their decisions right now. By their contributions to their 401k, to their Roth IRA, they can determine whether or not they retire. But they're proposing this as if it's just up in the air, out of their control. Now, this next slide is the one that really gets me. Younger generations are more interested in priorities such as having money to pursue a passion or hobby. Really? You mean to tell me that the younger generations are more interested in having money today to spend on passions or hobbies or whatever they want right now, without giving any thought to their future or retirement or all that boring stuff? Gen Z is more interested right now and living today. Do you think they'll have this same attitude when they're 60 years old and they have no savings? What will they be doing then? I bet their priorities will shift a little bit as they age, as they get a little bit older and come to the realization that no one's going to bail them out. They're going to have to work forever and ever because they didn't have their money working for them. This is the worst attitude you can have right now. Live today. Just spend on whatever you want today and we'll figure out the future later. Investing works by compounding. Putting a little bit of money away today amounts to an enormous sum of money later. It is critical that the younger generation start investing today, at least a portion of their money, because of how long they have for that money to work. By the time they get to retirement, they'll be taken care of if they make investments today. But if they continue with this lackadaisical, lazy attitude of focusing on today, not caring about retirement, that's not a real pressing issue right now, they're going to have a very difficult time when they get older. The United States government is not going to be able to bail them out. It doesn't have the money to. Now, this next slide is even worse, and I think Gen Z has things completely out of order here. This is a priority list. They literally rank priorities of what's important and what's not important. And they say that work-life balance is number 1. So having a good schedule is number 1, the most important thing in life. The last thing is family relationships. So work-life balance, way more important than family relationships. Now, number 2 is ability to pursue hobbies and passions. So doing what you want with your free time, that's number 2, right behind having an awesome schedule. Number 11 is physical health. So who cares about your physical health as long as you have time to do what you want with your free time? Number 3 is the ability to give back. So that's good. You want to be charitable. Number 10 is financial health. So the lowest ranking things on the priority list of Gen Z is your financial health, physical health, and family relationships. Those are the lowest priority. The top priorities are work-life balance, pursuing hobbies and passions, ability to give back, and romantic relationships. Now, aside from the obvious of how ridiculous this priority list is, I just want to point something out here if you're part of Gen Z, which many of my viewers are. Let me just share one bit of info here, just one tip. If you don't have financial health, then how are you going to have a good work-life balance? You have no say because you don't have good financial health. You're at the mercy of the job market. Now, the job market's good right now, but it's slowing. And there's going to be a certain point where it's going to be tough to get a job. At that point, you're going to have to accept whatever work you get and whatever schedule someone else tells you to work. That's not a fun situation to be in. Do you know how you have good work-life balance? How you have autonomy and control over your time and what you do during the day? You have financial health. If you have a lot of savings, a year worth of savings, if you have a lot of investments, if you have investments, passive income working for you, if you have what the internet calls FU money, that gives you control over your work-life balance. If you're in a bad situation working with people that you don't like, you can say, you know what, I'm going to go figure something else out. And I don't have to work here. I have money to be able to figure something else out. Financial health gives you the ability to have a good work-life balance. Now let's go on and move on to number 2, ability to pursue hobbies and passions. What do you think affords you the time to be able to pursue hobbies and passions? Financial health. This is how you're able to travel, how you're able to do things, and how you're able to get autonomy over your schedule by having financial health. Again, if you don't have your finances in order, if you're in debt, if you're in a situation where you're working paycheck to paycheck just to pay the bills, how are you going to have any time for hobbies and passions? Your number one focus is going to be how you get your next paycheck and pay your bills. Number 3, this one's possibly the most ridiculous, ability to give back. That sounds so good. I want to give back. I want to give to the world and donate and be a very charitable person. How do you give back if you don't have financial health? If you have no money for yourself, how do you expect to give money to other people? So in terms of giving back, at least if you're talking about financially, there's no way for you to give back unless you're making money, unless you're in a financially healthy spot yourself. And this can continue on. Romantic relationships. It's very difficult to have a great relationship if you're always fighting and struggling over your finances because you're broke. That puts stress on relationships. It makes it so that relationships are much worse off. Once you have financial health, you have a lot less stress. It leads to a better relationship. The same thing with mental well-being. One of the biggest things causing anxiety right now are people's finances. Getting this in order reduces anxiety, improving your mental well-being. The idea that you would have financial health at number 10 and all of this other stuff way above it, I think is a misordering. Financial health and physical health should be the very top ones. Same with family relationships, but that's a whole different issue. At the very least, these two should be the top 2. Everything else on this list improves with better financial health. Your work-life balance will improve as you have more control over what you're doing. Your abilities to pursue hobbies and passions will improve because you'll have more money to be able to pursue them. You can afford more time because you have more passive income, more free time. Your ability to give back is dramatically improved because you actually have money for yourself. You can't give back if you can't even afford your own life. Romantic relationships improve as there's less anxiety in the relationship. Mental well-being. Every part of this improves with greater financial health. So there's aspects of Gen Z that I agree with and aspects I don't. I agree with the criticisms for my generation, for the millennials being far too focused on working all the time, working to get ahead and having your life be work. I think that grind culture needs to go. There needs to be more work-life balance. Where I disagree is Gen Z seemingly being lackadaisical, not caring about the future, saying they don't even want to worry about retirement. That is scary. There's going to be an age where you want to retire, where you don't want to be forced to work against your will just to get your next meal. And doing investments right now, starting to contribute a little bit every month will make it so you have a retirement later. You don't have to give up all your income. You don't have to become grind culture and working all the time to have a good retirement. So there's some area between. I think that Gen Z is on the right track. I think it's an improvement over my generation. They're headed in the right direction. But I also think it should be steered towards having investments today, having retirement tomorrow, having finances be an important part of your life. If you get the financial aspect right, it will have a positive impact on a lot of other parts of life. So that's my thoughts on this. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.